My name is Kylie Matthews. I am 27 years old, and this is my true story. This really happened to me, and it completely changed my life. I once trusted someone deeply, but what they did to me was so shocking, so terrifying that I'm still haunted by it. Today, I want you to know how betrayal can come from the people you love the most. What started as something small soon turned into a nightmare. I never imagined. If you really want to know how it all happened, then stay with me till the very end, because my story will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, this story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries. I had just moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood outside of Denver, a place I thought would finally give me peace after years of chaotic city living. My parents had warned me that moving into a house all alone might be lonely, but I craved independence. My house was small, cozy, with a white fence and a garden that I promised myself I'd take care of, but the moment I stepped inside, I felt watched, like unseen eyes were on me. It wasn't long before I met my neighbor, a woman named Lillian, who lived in the house directly across from mine. She seemed friendly at first, the kind of neighbor who bakes cookies, smiles too much, and asks too many questions. She insisted on helping me move boxes, even though I politely declined. Something about the way her eyes lingered on me felt invasive, but I brushed it off as overthinking. A few days later, strange things began happening. My front door would be unlocked when I was sure I had locked it at night. I'd hear faint scratching noises against my windows, but when I checked, nothing was there. One evening, as I was unpacking late, I caught a glimpse of someone standing across the street just outside Lillian's house, staring directly at mine. I couldn't see clearly in the dark, but I knew it was her. My stomach twisted with unease. Soon Lillian became more persistent. She showed up unannounced at my door with food, sometimes knocking late at night. She'd say things like, "You shouldn't be alone in a house like this. It's dangerous for a young woman." Her words always carried a strange edge, as if they weren't advice but a warning. I tried to distance myself politely, but she seemed obsessed. The scariest part was when I found small gifts left on my porch: a scarf that wasn't mine, a set of keys that didn't fit my doors, and once a small doll with black button eyes. I felt my heart sink as I realized someone was deliberately trying to unsettle me. One night, I woke to the sound of footsteps inside my living room. I froze in my bed, my breath shallow, every nerve in my body screaming slowly. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept on my nightstand and crept downstairs. The living room was empty, but the back door was wide open. My heart pounded so hard it hurt, and that's when I saw muddy footprints leading inside, stopping right in the middle of my living room, then disappearing. There was no trail leading back out. I called the police, but when they arrived, they found nothing. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, nothing at all. They suggested maybe I was stressed or imagining things, but I knew what I saw the next day. Lillian came over with her usual smile, holding a basket of muffins. When I refused to take them, her smile faltered just slightly, her eyes narrowing as she whispered, "You can't keep shutting me out. Kylie, we're neighbors now. We belong to each other." My blood ran cold. I slammed the door in her face, but her muffled laughter lingered behind it. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by my window staring out at her house. Every light was off except one, her upstairs window. Behind the curtain I could see her silhouette, standing completely still, facing my house, not moving for hours. My chest tightened with dread. The fear grew unbearable, and I began hearing whispers at night, voices that seemed to come from the walls of my own home. Sometimes it sounded like my name being called softly, other times like laughter. I told myself it couldn't be real, but then one night I found a note slipped under my door that read, "You'll never escape me." My hand shook as I read it, my mind spinning. The handwriting was elegant but unsettling, almost childlike in its curves. And at the bottom, a small drawing of two stick figures, one taller, one shorter, holding hands in front of a house that looked exactly like mine. My instincts screamed that this wasn't just a neighbor being odd. It was something far more sinister. I decided I had to get evidence, so I set up a small camera in my living room facing the back door, hoping to catch whoever was breaking in. When I checked the footage the next morning, my blood froze. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the back door creaked open by itself as if pushed by an invisible hand, and out of the darkness, Lillian stepped inside. She didn't look around. She walked straight to my couch, sat down, and stared directly at the camera for over an hour, not blinking, not moving. Then she stood, walked to the stairs leading up to my bedroom, and the screen went black as if the camera had been shut off. My heart raced as I realized she'd been inside my house again, watching me as I slept. The police refused to believe me when I showed them the corrupted footage, saying it looked edited. But I knew the truth. I wasn't just dealing with a nosy neighbor anymore. I was dealing with someone dangerous, someone who had crossed the line Into madness, I decided I had to fight back, but little did I know what Lillian had planned for me was far worse than anything I could have imagined, and the real nightmare was only beginning. The days after I discovered the horrifying footage of Lillian sitting in my living room felt like a blur, a waking nightmare where reality and paranoia twisted together, leaving me constantly on edge. I couldn't sleep without jolting awake at every creak in the house, every gust of wind against the windows, convinced she was there inside watching me again. I tried to convince myself to leave, to pack a bag and go stay with a friend, but a stubborn part of me refused to be driven out of the home I had worked so hard to buy. This was supposed to be my safe place, and I couldn't let her take that from me. But fear is a strange thing. It doesn't just keep you awake at night. It begins to rot you from the inside, making you question your every move. Even the daylight didn't bring comfort anymore. I'd catch her staring from her window across the street, sometimes waving slowly, other times just standing there as still as a mannequin. The neighbors seemed oblivious, going about their daily routines as if nothing was wrong, and when I tried to talk to the couple living next door, they dismissed me, saying, "Oh, Lillian? She's harmless, just a little eccentric." Eccentric? That word felt like a cruel joke after what I had seen. She wasn't eccentric, she was dangerous. But the more I tried to warn others, the more they looked at me like I was the problem, like I was the unstable one. The isolation was suffocating, and Lillian seemed to feed on it. Every time I pulled into my driveway after work, she would already be outside pretending to garden or fetch her mail, her eyes fixed on me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And then came the gifts again, this time darker. I found a dead bird placed neatly on my doorstep, its wings spread out as if in mock flight, its eyes gouged out. Another day, I discovered a photograph slipped under my doormat. It was of me sleeping in my bed, the shot taken from the corner of my bedroom. My breath caught when I saw it. Someone had been inside my room while I slept, inches away from me, close enough to hear me breathe. I tore through my room in a frenzy, checking for hidden cameras, for holes in the walls, for anything that could explain how she had gotten in again that night. The whispers returned louder this time, almost playful, echoing through the hallway like children's voices singing a lullaby. "Kylie, Kylie, come play." I pressed my hands over my ears, rocking back and forth, whispering to myself that it wasn't real, that I wasn't losing my mind. But then a loud knock rattled my front door. I froze slowly. I crept to the peephole, my hands trembling so violently I could barely steady them, and there she was, Lillian, standing in the middle of the night, smiling, holding something in her hands. When she saw the shadow of my movement behind the peephole, she lifted it into the faint light. My heart dropped. It was my spare bedroom key, the very one I had lost weeks earlier, which I had convinced myself had just been misplaced. She waved it at me playfully, then set it on the doormat before walking away without a word. My entire body shook. She wanted me to know. She wanted me to feel her power over me. I wanted to scream, to call the police again, but I already knew they wouldn't help. To them, it would just be a weird neighbor leaving a prank. So I did the only thing I could think of. I barricaded myself in my bedroom, pushing a dresser and a chair against the door, clutching my baseball bat like my life depended on it. The hours dragged on, each minute stretching into eternity. Around 3 a.m., I heard the faint sound of my front door creaking open. My breath caught in my throat. The floorboards groaned under deliberate footsteps. She was inside. The footsteps moved slowly, almost tauntingly, from the living room to the kitchen, then up the stairs, each creak stabbing into my chest like a blade. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. Silence. Then a soft tapping, tap, tap, tap. "Kylie." Her voice was a whisper, but it slid under the door like smoke, wrapping around me, choking me with dread. "Why do you hide from me?" I clutched the bat tighter, my eyes glued to the dresser, pressed against the door, praying it would hold. For what felt like hours, she lingered outside, humming softly the same eerie tune I'd heard in the whispers before. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Silence. I didn't move. I stayed awake, frozen, until morning light finally poured through the cracks of the blinds. When I dared to push the dresser aside and open the door, my stomach churned with bile. Carved into the wood of the hallway wall just outside my bedroom were the words, "You can't hide forever." My hand shook as I touched the grooves, the letters, jagged and deep, cut with a knife. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just trying to scare me, she was breaking me down piece by piece until I would surrender, and I couldn't let her win. I started planning. I needed proof, undeniable proof, something the police couldn't dismiss as stress or imagination. I bought multiple hidden cameras and placed them around the house, some in obvious places, some carefully concealed. Every night I would set them up and pray they would catch her, and one night they did. At 2:47 a.m., One of the cameras in my kitchen captured her crawling through the doggy door I had never even used. She moved on all fours, her face tilted upward toward the camera, smiling with wide, unblinking eyes. She crawled across the floor slowly, almost deliberately, before standing and walking to the refrigerator. She opened it, took out a carton of milk, and drank directly from it before setting it back inside. Then she turned, walked into the hallway, and disappeared toward the stairs. The footage made my skin crawl, but it was exactly what I needed. I backed it up on multiple devices, made copies, determined that this would finally prove my case. But when I brought it to the police, something impossible happened. The footage was blank. Every copy I made, every backup, it was gone, as if it had been erased. Only I had seen it. No one else. I wanted to scream, to tear my hair out in frustration. How could this be happening? Was she somehow tampering with my files, or was something far darker at play? My mind spun with questions, but one thing was certain. Lillian wasn't just invading my home, she was unraveling my reality, warping it. So no one else would believe me. That night, as I sat in my bedroom, sleepless and trembling, I realized I couldn't stay passive anymore. I had to confront her to end this before she destroyed me completely. But what I didn't know then was that confronting her would drag me deeper into a nightmare I could never have imagined, and the truth about Lillian and what she really wanted from me was far more horrifying than I was prepared for. Next night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something irreversible was about to happen, as if the walls of my house were leaning in on me, pressing against my chest until I could barely breathe. I sat in my living room with all the lights off, clutching my phone in one hand and the baseball bat in the other, listening for every creak, every whisper of wind, every shift in the shadows. My body felt strung tight like a bowstring ready to snap. I had tried to convince myself to leave, to run, to go stay with someone, anyone, but it felt too late. Lillian had burrowed her way too deep into my life, like a parasite feeding on my fear. If I ran, she would follow. If I hid, she would find me. The only option was to face her. That night, the air felt heavier than usual, thick and damp, carrying the smell of wet soil. Even though it hadn't rained in days, I couldn't shake the thought that she was already inside, waiting in some shadowed corner, smiling to herself. As I sat there trying to hold myself together around 1 a.m., the silence broke with a faint scratching at the back door, like nails dragging across the wood. My heart hammered in my chest as I lifted the bat and crept toward the sound, each step echoing in my ears. When I peered through the glass, my blood ran cold. Lillian was crouched outside, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her wide grin glinting faintly in the moonlight. In her hands, she held a small box stained dark at the edges. She didn't knock, she didn't move, she just stared at me through the glass, her grin frozen like a mask. My phone shook in my hand as I tried to dial 911, but before I could press call, she slowly placed the box on the ground and stood. She lifted her finger to her lips in a silent motion, then turned and walked into the darkness of my backyard. I stood there frozen for what felt like hours before I finally gathered the courage to open the door. The box was small, crudely mailed shut, and the dark stains seeping through it made my stomach twist. With trembling hands, I pried it open and bile surged up my throat. Inside was a collection of photographs. Me sleeping, showering, cooking, even brushing my teeth, images taken from angles that could only mean she had been inside my home dozens of times without me knowing. And beneath the photographs was something worse, a lock of my hair tied neatly with a red ribbon. I dropped the box as if it had burned me and slammed the door shut, locking it, bolting it, pushing a chair under the handle for good measure. But even as I did, I knew locks meant nothing to her. She came and went as she pleased, bending the world to her will in ways that defied reason. I barely slept, jumping at every sound, every flicker of shadow. By morning, exhaustion weighed down my body. But I forced myself to go to the police again, this time with the photographs as proof. But when I opened the box at the station, my breath caught. The photos were gone, every single one. In their place was a single scrap of paper with shaky handwriting that read, "Why do you keep betraying me?" The officer looked at me with thinly veiled suspicion, his tone laced with condescension, as he asked if I had been drinking, if I was under stress, if maybe I had placed the note there myself. Humiliation and rage burned in my chest as I stumbled out of the station, tears blurring my vision. It was clear now, no one would help me. No one would believe me. It was me against her. That evening, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went to a hardware store and bought heavy chains, multiple locks, and motion sensor lights. I rigged my doors, secured my windows, and set traps in the hallways. Nothing lethal, just enough to alert me if she came creeping in again. I even left one of the cameras unplugged, baiting her to think I'd given up. When night fell, I sat in the corner of my bedroom with the bat, adrenaline keeping me awake. Hours passed in silence, and I began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't come this time. But then around 3:15 a.m. the sound came, the faint metallic click of a lock turning. My stomach flipped. As the front door creaked open, the motion lights in the living room flicked on, and for a split second I saw her on the camera feed. Lillian crawling again, her movements spider-like and jerky, her grin stretched impossibly wide as she dragged her. Fingers along the wall, I wanted to scream, but instead I tightened my grip on the bat and waited, my heart slamming against my ribs. The footsteps grew louder as she climbed the stairs, pausing at intervals as if savoring the anticipation. Then the doorknob to my bedroom turned, the dresser I'd pushed against it rattled the wood, groaning under the pressure. "Kylie," she whispered, her voice muffled but unmistakable, "why are you hiding?" "You invited me in." My blood ran cold. I had never invited her, and never. But as the words left her lips, something inside me faltered, the memory of the day I first moved in, of her standing across the street with her welcoming smile, drifted back to me. I remembered her offering me cookies, the plate in her outstretched hands, and me exhausted from unpacking, taking them with a polite smile. Had that been it? Had that been the moment she had claimed some kind of twisted permission? The dresser shifted again, harder this time, and I stumbled back, gripping the bat so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Go away!" I screamed, my voice cracking, but instead of retreating, she laughed, a low guttural sound that made my skin crawl. Then silence. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare breathe. After what felt like an eternity, I finally worked up the courage to push the dresser aside and crack the door open. The hallway was empty, but carved deeper into the wall, right beneath her previous message, were new words. "Soon." That single word sank into my bones like ice. I slammed the door shut again, locking it, barricading it, but I knew it was useless. She could come and go as she pleased. I was just fooling myself. Sleep never came that night. By morning, my eyes burned with exhaustion. But I forced myself to think, to plan. I couldn't keep reacting. I needed to take control, to turn the game on her. If she wanted me broken, I had to show her I wasn't afraid anymore. Even if it was a lie, I decided to confront her directly. That evening, just before sunset, I crossed the street and knocked on her door. My hand shook, but I forced myself to stand tall, to breathe evenly. The door creaked open, and there she was, Lillian, smiling as if she had been expecting me. "Kylie," she said softly, her voice syrupy sweet. "I was wondering when you'd come over." Her house smelled of mildew and something coppery metallic, almost like blood. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating. Behind her, the interior was dim, the walls lined with dozens of photographs, every single one of me. Some were recent, others from weeks, maybe months ago, but one detail froze me to the spot. There were photos of me as a child, my knees buckled, my throat tightening as I stared. How could she have those? How could she know? Lillian tilted her head, her grin widening. "We've known each other much longer than you realize. Kylie, you just don't remember." My vision blurred, my body trembling with equal parts terror and fury. "Stay away from me," I hissed, forcing strength into my voice. "I didn't feel. If you come near me again, I swear." But before I could finish, she leaned closer, her eyes glinting in the dim light. "You can't swear away what's already yours," she whispered. "You belong to me. You always have." Something inside me snapped, then a primal scream clawing its way out of my throat as I shoved past her and bolted back to my house, slamming the door, locking it, barricading it with everything I could. My chest heaved, my vision swimming with panic. I realized then that this wasn't just a game of cat and mouse. This was something deeper, older, something I couldn't yet comprehend. And as night fell once again, I knew that the final confrontation was coming, that whatever Lillian truly was, whatever she wanted from me, would be revealed soon, and the truth I feared would be more horrifying than anything I could imagine. The next night felt different, like the very air in the house was waiting, holding its breath with me. I sat curled up in the living room, every light blazing, every lock sealed, every motion sensor armed, but deep down, I knew it didn't matter. Nothing kept her out. She'd already seeped into every part of my life, every thought, every shadow. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, hadn't even showered. My body trembled with exhaustion, but my mind was razor sharp, running circles around itself. I thought about the photographs at her house, the ones from when I was a child, and the way she had said I had always belonged to her. Those words echoed in my skull like a curse. Around midnight, the power went out. Every bulb in the house blinked once, then died, plunging me into suffocating darkness. My phone's flashlight barely cut through it, casting jittery cones of light across the walls. I tried to calm my breathing, but the silence was deafening, broken only by the faint creak of a floorboard upstairs. She was here again. My hands shook as I gripped the bat, moving Slowly toward the staircase, each step groaned beneath me as I climbed the light, trembling across the walls, catching glimpses of words carved deeper and deeper into the wood. Not just soon anymore, but phrases. Mine forever, don't fight it. Remember me, my throat tightened as I reached the top of the stairs. At the end of the hallway, my bedroom door was wide open, though I had left it locked and barricaded. The shadows inside shifted, moving, though nothing should have moved. My pulse pounded in my ears as I lifted the bat higher and stepped inside, and there she was. Lillian sitting calmly on my bed as if she had been waiting for me all her life. Her grin stretched wider than seemed humanly possible, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of my phone's light like an animal's. In her lap was an old leather-bound album. "Come," she whispered, patting the space beside her. My legs trembled, but some part of me, the part that needed to know, that needed answers, moved me closer. Step by step, she opened the album slowly, her long fingers caressing each page. Inside were photographs not just of me, but of my parents, my childhood home, birthdays, school events, photos no stranger could possibly have. My heart dropped into my stomach. "How do you have these?" I whispered, my voice cracking. She tilted her head, her grin never faltering. "Because I was there, always there. You just couldn't see me then, children rarely do." My knees buckled and I sank to the floor staring. At the images, memories began to surface, fuzzy and dreamlike. A woman watching from across the street when I was 6. A shadow in my bedroom corner when I was 8. A smile in a window at my 12th birthday party. I had always told myself those were nightmares, tricks of a child's mind. But they weren't. They were her. Always her tears stung my eyes as I shook my head, clutching the bat tighter. "You're lying," I whispered, though my voice betrayed the crack of doubt. Her grin widened, showing too many teeth. "If I was lying, would you remember me now?" And I did. I remembered the plate of cookies she had given me when I first moved here. The way I had accepted them without hesitation, without knowing the invitation, the permission. A thread of horror unraveled inside me as I realized she hadn't just been my neighbor. She'd been with me all along, just out of sight, waiting for me to recognize her. My fear twisted into rage. I swung the bat, aiming for her head, but she moved too fast, catching the bat with one hand, her grip ice cold and unyielding. She leaned close, her face inches from mine, and whispered, "You can't fight what you are." My breath caught. "What I am?" She let go of the bat and placed a finger against my chest, right over my heart. "You are mine, a part of me. You were born with my mark, Kylie. That's why you see me when others don't. That's why you can never escape." My stomach lurched as if the floor had fallen away beneath me. My skin burned where her finger touched, and suddenly images flooded my mind, visions of her standing over my crib, her shadow stretching across my childhood room, her whisper in my ear as I slept. She hadn't chosen me randomly. She had claimed me. From the very beginning, I stumbled back, shaking my head, my chest heaving. "No, you don't own me. You never will." With every ounce of strength I had left, I shoved her away and sprinted down the stairs, crashing through the front door into the night. The cool air hit my face, but behind me I heard her laughter, loud, guttural, endless, echoing into the darkness. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in the middle of the street, sobbing and gasping for breath. Neighbors' lights flicked on. People came outside. They saw me screaming, shaking, clutching the bat like a lifeline. But when I turned to point to show them the monster across the street, Lillian's house was dark, empty, silent, abandoned, as if it had never been lived in at all. The police came, they searched, they told me the house had been empty for decades, its last resident long dead. They said I must have imagined it, that my mind had created a ghost out of loneliness, exhaustion, paranoia. But I knew better. I had seen her, I had felt her, and I knew she wasn't gone. Even now, weeks later, I can feel her watching me. Every mirror holds a shadow just behind me. Every window glints with the reflection of a grin. Every night I hear her whisper my name just as I'm about to fall asleep. Kylie. She's waiting for me to give in, waiting for me to remember fully what I already know. I was never her neighbor. I was always her possession.